Hey guys, Zeteo here. Welcome to another Beyond All Reason replay analysis. Today we're going to be taking a look at some basic economy management and some macro mechanics. We'll be focusing on a short 1v1 between Nebuchadnezzar II and O'Brien, but this information can be helpful pretty much in all team sizes and pretty much on any map. So, some pretty basic stuff, but very, very important stuff to kind of nail if you want to do really well in any matchup or any team size or whatever. Anyways, let's get into it. We got Nebuchadnezzar here at the bottom. Let's put it on some player review just to see how this goes. Alright, so yep, the 5 mechs, that's a good starting spots. Some good luck, have funs. Alright, so it looks like, yeah, you're going into 1 winds, 1 solar into lab. Which is a little bit light on energy. The only reason why you'd want to do this is because you want to rush ticks. Yeah, pretty much only ticks. I mean, well, ticks, or I suppose if you're doing a vehicle lab, you could do, either a rascal or a rover type of opening. Because as you start building stuff out of this lab, you're going to be draining rather quickly, and so you're going to want to build on some energy right away. Alright, so ticks, you're boosting out some ticks. Okay, so it does, so this looks sort of like a tick rush in a way, because you're skipping one of the wind turbines. Usually it's 2 wind turbines and a solar, or 3 wind turbines, or 2 solars, I suppose, before a lab. Alright, so these ticks, yeah, should automatically just be going out. They sat for a second, but not a huge deal. Alright, energy's low now, so now you're adding on that wind turbine. So that's good. You're adding on a second one, that's good. Wind is quite high and you're still quite low, so if this drops, you might need to add on a lot. Yeah, I would add on even more at that point, because this lab is adding another 100 build power for that. Alright, so your ticks are going out. Enemy ticks defending, it looks like. Yeah, these ticks going on the side, like on this map in particular, like this 5 mechs and these 2.3 mexes that are all like kind of in the same area, and also these 2.3 mexes make this area basically where you're going to start no matter what, unless you're doing something crazy cheesy, like an air opener type of thing, but we're not going to talk about that. So yeah, you can basically just send your ticks in to this location. You don't really have to check the sides unless you don't see them there, so I won't worry about that too much. But very importantly, your energy is stalling and you're trying to boost the lab. I would, like, whenever your energy is, like, say below this point here, I would just add on energy. Like, that's a pretty dire energy situation. So when your energy is that stalled, some of these mexes can go offline. Your commander can't degun right now. LLTs go offline. Ticks require energy to shoot. Same with other scouts, so very, very important to have that energy, otherwise you're just sending them in to die. Unfortunately, it looks like, yeah, a little bit slow of a reaction there. Your commander could have moved a couple steps this way and gotten that tick, but one wind turbine loss is not like a huge deal. Alright, so energy's still low. This is like the biggest issue here, is the energy. Your commander's sitting here idle as well, and should be adding on some energy. I mean, obviously you're spending your APM over here. You're kind of just like looking at this location, trying to get this res spot. You don't get it, but yeah, that's actually not as important as your energy right now. Because if you have your energy going, you could have, or if your commander wasn't idle, if he was building a little bit of energy and then queued to assist the lab afterwards, then your commander's not sitting idle, and you're adding on some energy. Like, you could have had several more wind turbines during that time, basically, and then also been cranking out units, and then just had more pawns out here already. So kind of a big deal. I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail a little bit later. The other big thing is the lack of radar. So obviously your radar range is this green circle here, and it's blocked by this hill here. So your command, you don't actually see anything on this side of it at the moment. Whoops. So I would highly recommend putting a radar here. You can try to squeeze one over here to have better vision, but you'd have to move your commander all the way to over here to do that. So a radar here would look like this. Obviously there are some like, spots where it doesn't quite cover because of the various hills. Over here is a little bit better because you can see, things that are like hugging the wall here, but yeah, I wouldn't worry about that too much. Just having a radar on the high ground would be nice. Looks like you're getting one down here. You're getting one, okay, so you're getting one on the low ground. Better than nothing, but yeah, not ideal because there is a very large blind spot. And, if your opponent moves units this way, seeing them at this point is too late. It's gonna be hard to defend anything with that. So say there's like five pawns coming down this way. They can easily just kill these two. And then the remainder could maybe even kill this light laser tower. Or they could sneak on by this way and just destroy all your resources. So kind of a big deal. Alright, so here you're idle once again. Now you're queuing up units. Commander's idle as well. So unfortunately that means there's a lot of build time or a lot of build power you're not utilizing, and your metal's rising because of that. So now that you've got it going again, and I think maybe at this point you're kind of looking at it like, okay, I have a ton of resources all of a sudden, like let's put down a lab because I need to spend it. And this is basically just means that like the setup was improper because all your stuff was idled. You basically weren't building anything at all other than you're walking towards this mechs to grab this. So not ideal. So to remedy that kind of thing, I would highly recommend using the repeats on your factory. And there's actually an option. I'll just type in repeats. Whoops, let's spell it correctly. Repeats. Ignore the red stuff here. What you're looking for is this auto repeats button, and mine's toggled to on. But basically when that's on, whenever a factory finishes getting made, this button will automatically switch to on. And what you can do with that is just like queue up, whatever units in whatever order you want, and it'll just repeat that queue in that same order. And you might be thinking, well, how do I, let's say I want to build a res bot, and I only want one of them. I don't want them in the queue, and I want them sooner than later. If you hold Alt while clicking or hitting the hotkey for the unit, in this case it would be X for Lazarus, you insert it as the next thing to be made. Whenever the current thing is done being made, it'll switch to this, and it'll only produce one if you hold Alt. So that's like, move it forward, or move it to the front of the queue and only do one of them with that repeat key on. If the repeat key is off, it functions a little bit differently, which is a little bit annoying. In that case, what it does instead is it'll cancel what you're currently building and then builds only one of those units before continuing on to build the rest of the queue. So just just take note that it is different if the repeat key is off. I like these two pawns here guarding this construction bot. It's all good stuff. That's usually something I would recommend. So you got some radar coverage. Unfortunately, this con is completely exposed, which is, it's better than not expanding, but ideally you'd want some kind of protection, at the very least some radar coverage. So this kind of comes down to like where your radars are placed. And when you're looking for radar placement, you want to look for hills so that they can see over the hill and the hill doesn't block the line of sight, right? So like I was recommending putting a radar here, I would also maybe recommend either a radar up here, which it's pretty close to that other radar, so it's not really the best spot for that reason. A better spot would be over here. In fact, maybe like around here. So just looking at the coverage, like sure, like there are some rocks here that blocks it, but you'd be able to see all the way up to here. Which means, there's only a very slim area that your opponent could slip by, and you have a nice early warnings, of things that are coming in from that direction, and that helps a lot. Just having the, like radar is so important. I actually, repeatedly say it's the most OP unit in the game, because without radar, you have no information and you can't defend properly. You can't attack properly. You can't defend properly. Making any kind of strategic choice in terms of like unit movements is basically impossible. And so the better the radar coverage, the better the information, the better you can make choices, right? So yeah, just as it is currently, you know, seeing units like finally when they get here is a little bit too late, and you know, trying to move your units to defend this, you know, this con is just, it's going to take way too long. You want as much early warning as you can, so lots of radar, you know, in very strategic locations. All right, so a lot of idle stuff here again. So what you want to do to fix this idleness with your constructors that are at your base is just whenever you're done building something, like say this commander is building like, you know, a bunch of wind turbines, like 4 wind turbines or something. After you have that queued up, while holding shift, if you right click on your factory, you're now adding to the queue like, okay, once you're done with building your wind turbines, I want you to assist the factory. And that way they're not sitting idle unless the factory's idle. And so it's just like one less thing to worry about, you know, instead of like, you know, at the moment the bar might seem like a game of like, oh, there's like a million things to manage. Like I have all my units to manage, like maybe I have several groups of units around the map. I got my economy to manage at the base. I have all the queues from all the different constructors in the base. I have all the queues from all the constructors out here. And it feels very overwhelming for new players. And it's actually not too bad if you get your mechanics down a little bit. And you know, if you set up like long queues. So your constructors out here, like you queued up these two mexes and then queued up these two. So that's not bad. Like that's a reasonable queue for this map because there isn't like a ton of mexes to grab. You know, this guy here kind of doing the same thing, so that's not bad. But you can extend that to your base. And I think, you know, even this constructor was idle for a moment after he builds this stuff here. So, you know, just trying to queue more stuff up as you send them out if you can. And if you don't have the time to spare at the, you know, when the constructor comes out to queue up all that, that's okay too. You just have to like remember to go back and add to that queue. In fact, one of the things that I do in my games is I'll kind of like have this checklist of things that I you know, want to put in the forefront of my head that I just constantly like think about as I'm playing. And you know, if I'm unable to make a long queue with my constructor, I'll add that to the list of things to check off. Like, oh yeah, there's that constructor on the right that has a shorter queue than I want. So if I get a moment, I want to go back and look at that. And you know, it can be a little bit difficult trying to do it in that you know, in that sense, because you know, like maybe there's a battle and you get a little sidetracked and tunnel visioned on the battle, and then you're thinking about like, okay, my macro up my base, and then you're thinking about like, oh, my units are attacked now, so now I need to go back to my units, and then like all of a sudden your constructors are sitting idle for a while. You know, it's really easy to do that and then just forget about it. But yeah, just like periodically trying to check in is really nice if you can. So just getting in the habit of doing like a checklist is really nice. Unfortunately, there's a lot of idle stuff here again. You're building a con turret. You still have some energy issues. You can't actually utilize this con turret very well because you don't quite have enough energy. And you know, just to go back to that idea, energy is so important because these mexes go offline when you don't have enough energy. Your ticks don't attack when you don't have enough energy. Your light laser towers don't attack when they don't have energy. You can't degun when you don't have energy. So if your commander's like out in the map, gets surrounded by enemy units, he's just dead because you can't degun the units and survive. So all very, very important stuff. It's better to excess energy than to have too little. So just keep that in mind. And if you excess your energy, just build like a converter or two, and don't excess too hard. I think I was pointing out previously to Nebuchadnezzar that they were overbuilding energy, so this might have just been an overcompensation in a way. And then yeah, usually if your energy, like if you fix up your energy a bit, and say you're accessing energy or accessing metal, I would not put down the second lab yet, because you don't really have a lot of build power, and you want to utilize build power more efficiently than this. So I'm saying that because each lab is rather expensive on metal. It's like a bot lab 650 metal, a vehicle lab 740 metal, and they only provide 100 build power. So it's not a lot for how much they cost. It's, you know, the cost is really in the build options that they can like start producing. In terms of build, like what you actually want to do is add on build power before you add on a second lab. And usually you want to do construction turrets because they're very efficient. It only costs 110 metal and they give 200 build power. So that's almost a 1-to-1 ratio, which is crazy. That's like super efficient. Construction bots, they provide a little bit of energy. So there's that. They have construction options and you can move out and expand with them and stuff like that. So like it's an okay thing, but usually you don't want to add them on just for build power. But it is still going to be better than a second lab, because, you know, they cost, well, in terms of bots anyway, they cost 110 to make, and they provide 100, or sorry, they provide 80 build power. So it's still much better than a second lab. The only reason why you'd want a second lab this early is if you really, really, really wanted the build options out of it. Like you really wanted these Janices. Which I would say in this particular situation, not a great option, not a great choice, because Janus are slow moving, and they're kind of expensive. 240 metal. You know, medium tanks are faster, but they're still pretty expensive. I would say at this point in the game, you want fast, cheap units. Rovers are okay for vision, but you know they can't really fight at all. Blitzes are your best choice here. Blitzes or incisors or pawns or grunts if you're Cortex. Because they're faster, they can get to areas to defend and to attack. If you have a slow unit, they're always going to be playing catch up against an opponent that just runs around them. And they'll never be able to catch up because they're too slow. So those types of units are a little bit less efficient in a 1v1 in a way, because you want to be able to cover the space. And this is true in like, you know, even large team games. You want to cover your space, but the space that you need to cover is much smaller. So that makes those slower, powerful units a little bit better to have. But yeah, here you're trying to cover this entire space, which is much bigger than you know, say in an 8v8 or even like on this map we'll just say 3v3 because it's not really an 8v8 map. But say there's someone that spawned, you have an ally that spawned there, yourself that's here, and then another ally that's down here. Well, your territory that you have to defend is really only this, because your allies will cover the other sides a bit, right? So in that kind of scenario, big powerful units like Janus or medium tanks are going to fare a lot better. And then yeah, so yeah, Janus is not a great choice here, because if you have your Janices say here and your opponent attacks here, well, those units that come in here, if they're fast units, they can swing in here, they can hit here, they can hit here, like they can go wherever they want, and these slow Janices will just never catch up. Yeah, so fast units, good unit. Until you have this, like, unless it's like really stalematey, you don't really want those units. And if it's really stalematey, I mean, on this map that basically will never happen because it's so open. But yeah, there are some maps out there that will happen. Alright, so you do need energy still. You are adding on some wind turbines, so that's great. Yeah, sooner would have been a bit better. In a lot of situations, you do want maybe just one slow building some wind turbines, but since you are in such a situation where you like desperately need it, having two is nice. I mean, at this point, I would even have my commander maybe building one solar, just because you do have some metal, and then as you build on more wind turbines and have like a stack of them, then you can reclaim the solars. If in case you don't know, when you reclaim a living unit, including buildings, you get a 100% return on metal. So it's totally fine to build some, um, some things like that, and then reclaim them later. Especially solar, because solar costs only metal, and so they're like a big metal sink. Oof, that's unfortunate. I don't know if you guys caught that, but this Janus shot at those units and ended up hitting the other Janus instead of the units, so big loss there. That's kind of the other trouble with Janus, is they'll oftentimes hit friendly units. That's one of their biggest weaknesses too, so it's something to be careful of, but it's really hard to be careful of that. Alright, so you see the enemy commander, and now this is getting scary because this is pretty close to your base, and so you want to be especially careful. Unfortunately, you queued up some Whistlers. Whistlers are, I mean, they're very much like the Janus, except, in terms of like how fast they are and where they can go. But obviously they have a lot more range, and they can, they do a lot less damage. So they're much better in like choky situations where it's a little bit more stalemate-y. They're not going to be great at holding anything up here because units can just run around them. And you kind of need a bunch of them for them to really do too much. And they also need protection, otherwise units can just run up onto them and destroy them pretty easily. So it's kind of unfortunate that you lost those Janus and those pawns, because now they have no protection. In a lot of cases, like in 8v8s, Whistlers can be okay when paired with things like light laser towers. I mean, pairing them with Janus is nice too, because that, the Janus prevents your opponent from just running up on them. But it's such an open area that an opponent that spreads their units quite well will still be able to fare pretty well against like a Janus Whistler kind of composition. Or they can just ignore it and run somewhere else. So, there's that to keep in mind too. They're just too slow to really do too much. Alright, so Com's still moving forward. You only have Whistlers, so this becomes kind of an issue here. You still have energy needs, so this is kind of one of the bigger issues. But yeah, it looks like you're going into Janus more heavily to try to deal with this. Now, rocket bots actually do pretty well against both of those units, so it's kind of hard here. All right, so this is a big deal. So your opponent's going straight for it. Maybe I won't slow it down that much. You're getting light laser tower. You're blocking it. Okay, you didn't block it quite well enough, unfortunately. Trying to block. I don't know if you caught that. This Janus just hit your commander. So now you are in terrible, terrible situation. Or otherwise you would have been okay here, I think. Especially with this Janus shot that's coming in as well. And unfortunately, I think you lose the game here because of that. All because of the Janus shot. So yeah, it's kind of unfortunate because the way that your opponent moved in here, like they should have lost, but because the Janus hit you instead of them, you didn't. So that wasn't like a composition error. That wasn't like, if he had the rocket bots in here, that would have been like, he could have finagled a win out of here pretty easily. But with how he went in with just his commander, like you should have won that, and you just didn't because of the Janus shot. But yeah, I mean, I think you did the right thing in terms of, like, you saw it coming, you moved your commander into position, you put down LLT. Unfortunately, you didn't quite block it well enough, so the LLT died. And yeah, I mean, it just kind of happens that way sometimes, right? But anyways, I want to go and circle back to some of the things I've been talking about during this video, and kind of touch up on expanding upon some of it a little bit further. So I do have some notes here I'm kind of just looking over really quickly. So first things first, your energy stall early on, and your idle commander early on, and your idle con down here early on. Probably the biggest deals, because especially the commander being idle, because your commander has 300 build power, which is lots for very early. Um, so any idle time is kind of a big deal, and you could have had more wind turbines, you could have been pumping out more units and stuff like that, so that's a huge deal. Um, so you want to add that to your checklist in a way. The second thing is, or yeah, I guess, yeah, the second thing is the energy stall. Anytime you see your energy too low, just add on some more winds and go back to what you're doing. So like, especially with your commander, if it's a like dire situation where your energy is all the way down to 0, um, add on some, like, say like 4 wind turbines, or if it's very early on, maybe it's just 2 wind turbines, and then go back to assisting the lab. Um, and that way you can get a sense of like, oh, I need this many wind turbines. You might get a sense of, um, this early in the game when the wind speed's like at this kind of spot, I'm gonna need this many wind turbines, and then you can automatically just say, okay, build the lab, and then add on these wind turbines, and then assist the lab, and then as it goes down a little bit more, maybe you add on some more, and just like adjusting in that way helps a lot. And I'll talk about like ways to help yourself do things like that, like help yourself do the checklist or whatever you're trying to focus on. I'll get to that in a minute. Um, but yeah, before I get to that, I want to talk about the other things, such as setting up long queues. Like your con here was idle for a moment, so just like, try to queue up all this stuff as quickly as you can, obviously. So for example, my first con that comes out will oftentimes just go out, I'll do, I mean, you can do an area mix, which you double tap Z to do an area mix, and then you can just drag to, get all the mexes in that area. Usually I actually just click because I want them precisely built instead of like on the exact center of each deposit. But yeah, you can just do an area mex and then even keep like, so I hit ZZ area mex, X, what is it? Yeah, just X, hold shift, click for a tower, let go of shifts and then hit C to get that's radar. Hold shift, put down the radar, let go of shift, double tap Z, and then area mex, maybe some more mexes do the same thing, and just getting into that kind of motion with your hands helps a lot, especially in 1v1s where your mexes are oftentimes further away and not directly in front of you. Because in like team games, you have an ally that's on the side, right? So like, you're generally just expanding forward, so you don't need as much defense because your units can cover those areas a little bit better. But in 1v1s, you typically want more things like light laser towers, and of course, be thinking about radar as well. So so what that actually looks like in practice is, with your with your builder, double tap Z, do that, X, that, Z, X, C, and then you can even go up there and start going up here. You don't need a radar at every single node, but just having that kind of motion is nice. And when you're building radar, it can be very important to like find good spots for them, like up here. So maybe instead of putting the radar here, I'll do something like double tap Z, grab the mexes, X, tower, C, radar here, double tap mexes here, and then just do that sort of thing. Actually, maybe I wouldn't put a radar here because you have a radar here. But then as you move forward, maybe after this cluster, I would put a radar up here. And then you have it all queued up. So you don't have to worry about it. Now, obviously, doing all that might take quite a bit of time. And it's going to be important that, you're doing things like if you're trying to be aggressive, you don't want your units just like chilling here. Obviously, you want them moving forward. And it can be hard to manage both setting up this long queue, managing your units going forward, and managing your base. And so, do as much as you can. Maybe you only get to this part and then you're attacked and you're like, oh shit, I need to deal with that. So then you deal with that. But then after the attack, you go back to setting up the queue. And so you want to be, you want to remind yourself like, oh, I need to still do that. Same with the right side. You can do the same thing with the right side. You had two cons here, just kind of assisting the lab for quite a while. Um, and you didn't really have the energy to assist it. So what I would actually be doing instead is one of them could automatically just be building some wind turbines back here, and then another one could be sent out immediately, queued up to do the same sort of thing. ZX, C, all the same stuff going along that way. And so that's typically how I would do things. And then as I need energy, or I'm sorry, as I need build power, because you already have metal, your metal income's going up because you're grabbing those mexes. Your energy's going up to meet the demands of those mexes because you have another con down here building wind turbines. And then I would have another con over here doing like, if I need a little bit more energy, he could do that, just add on like 4 wind turbines or something like that at a time. And then if I need a con turret, he's also around to build a con turret or an energy storage or anything like that. So just having one near your base is useful in that kind of way. Commander can do some of that, but obviously they can't build a con turret, so it's a little bit limited. And then as you get con turrets, now your commander can start moving out. And so oftentimes what people do is once they have an expansion con going out, they have energy going up, and they have a reasonable amount of metal still, they'll put down a construction turret pretty early on, have the commander assist it, and then it's built rather quickly. And then that con will go out to the other side, start grabbing more mexes and stuff like that. And then commander can go forward, grab these mexes, put down some towers, put down some radars, same thing, keep moving forward. So you're doing the same thing as the cons. The only difference is obviously that's the main routes that your opponent's going to take to get to you. So you want to be mindful of how far you're going and maybe put down some extra towers so that your commander doesn't get sniped, depending on how in the game it is. But yeah, the sooner you set up like say like a frontal zone of LLTs, the faster this area is blocked off and the things behind it are safer from attack. Same thing with the cons. This is kind of a more advanced line of thinking. Like right now, I wouldn't really worry about this. I'd just worry about getting your resource expansions down properly. But a more advanced concept is instead of expanding out like to the sides, which is typically what a lot of people would recommend, even high level players would recommend just expanding like normal. One of the things that I've seen exceptional players do, that I try to do, but it's rather difficult, is instead of going out to the sides, I mean it's kind of hard to showcase this on this map in particular, but instead of going out to the sides, I would have my con. I mean, obviously you'd want to grab these first so you'd have them, but then afterwards maybe sending the con out this way to set up a radar LT station here, and then you're starting to block off this area so it's harder to attack. And if you do the same thing on the other side, actually this other side has this natural hill here, but yeah, you put down like a radar, well maybe not there because this hill here, maybe you put the radar on the hill actually. So you put a radar here, you put maybe a tower to defend the radar over there, and you put another tower here, put another tower here, and all of a sudden, and actually a lot of times there'll be some mexes out here too, just not on this map. So then all of a sudden you have this area protected, you have this area protected, and you're also maybe putting down some LTs as you go out this way. So that's protected, and your commander's moving forward, and now this is protected. And now it's really hard for your opponents to even get back here to attack this area. Now obviously you're skipping these mexes, so then you want another con to go out there, grab these mexes, and then by that time you usually have enough energy or enough metal coming in that you need more energy production. So I'll usually just have that con building some energy out here somewhere, or something like that. Sorry, I went kind of on a tangent there, but I'm excited about that kind of stuff. Um, anyways, moving along. um, but yeah, if you set up your energy production well, you get your resources in order, and your metal starts rising, that's when you want to put down things like con turrets to assist your lab and just crank out units even faster. And factories are automatically on low priority, so the metal is prioritized towards cons. So even if you're out of metal, your expansions and your commander will have priority over that metal. And then all the excess or extra metal that you're getting will go into the lab and into producing units. So you're basically going to be using all your metal in that kind of way, hopefully, if you do it properly. All your metal will be spent. Now, obviously, if you do it this way, you might have an excess of energy, and there might be times when you say, like, okay, I don't need more energy production right now. Let's just cancel some of this queue. Let's go tell this guy to assist the lab instead of finishing the queue. And if you're doing a lot of wins for energy, I might do something. I would suggest doing something like queuing up like a bit of wins like this, and then putting down a storage, and then some more wins down here or something. Just like having a storage in between, so that if wins goes and dips down, you still have some storage to work with, and that can be very helpful and useful. Especially when it's a big gap, like 2 to 18 is a pretty big gap. I would even recommend putting down a second storage at some point, or even a third storage. And then once you have like 2 storages, you can do things like reclaim your solar. You don't need them at all at that point. The only reason to keep them around, like as the game goes on, is because you don't have a storage, or like wind can dip down so low that you want to have something, and you don't have the storage to like help out with that, I guess. Anyways, to wrap things up, I want to finally talk about like ways that you can keep yourself from tunnel visioning. And this is kind of a hard concept to explain in a way. But basically what you're going to want to do is put certain things, or get certain things into habit. You want to make it a habit to fix, to glance up at your energy and see, okay, I have an energy issue. It's too low right now. Let's put down some wind turbines. Oh, my energy is too high. Okay, let's stop this queue. Let's fix that. Like, oh, my con is idle. Let's fix that. And there's a setting, I think it's automatically on, but there's a setting that'll show idled units on the bottom here. And there's a button to select the next idle units. That can be quite useful in that kind of situation if you remember to use it, which I never do. I try to, I don't know, I just remember how to, I just put in my mind to remember, like, oh yeah, I need to fix this queue or whatever. And the way you do that is, like like all this information is just going to pass through you unless you like commit it to habit. And so the way you want to do that is kind of just say it in your head. In fact, one of the good practices that I used to do when I was playing StarCraft 2 to build this habit is before game started, I'd put it in my mind. I'll just say to myself things like, look, I don't care if I win or lose. Like, if I lose, no big deal. If I lose, no big deal. That's the first probably really good habit to build is like, don't care about losing. But after that, saying things to yourself like, or repeating to yourself things like, okay, the one thing I want to do this game really well is fix my energy. The one thing I want to do this game really well is check my resource bar, and just repeat that one line to yourself. The one, all I want to do is check the resource bar, check the resource bar, check the resource bar, check the resource bar. Just really check the resource bar. Say it in like different ways. And this is gonna sound, it seems kind of silly, right? To do all that. But it builds the habit eventually. Eventually you will just like, and you want to do that throughout the game. You want to just say to yourself like, what should I be doing? Check the resource bar. What should I be doing? Check the resource bar. What should I be doing? Check the resource bar. And just form that habit. And the more you do that, the faster and easier it'll build that habit. Um, so with all my RTX experience, I kind of do it all automatically now, and I can just like add things to what I call the checklist. That and in my mind, I just automatically have this alarm of check the checklist. And it's not like going off in my head and I'm saying to myself, check the checklist. No, instead, it's just automatically saying, what's the next thing I should be doing? My con, and the things that like the con being idle is just automatically on that list, and I just automatically go do it because it's like ingrained into my head of like, oh, earlier I put in my head, check the con because my queue is too low, too shallow. So now my brain automatically goes back to go check that con, go check that energy, go check that metal. Um, I hope that makes sense. It's kind of a strange one to put out there, I suppose. Um, yeah, the more you do it, the faster it'll build it, become a habit, and then you won't have to do it anymore. It'll just be there to do it. Um, but yeah, definitely let me know either in the comments or in, you know, um, the replay thread. If you have any questions about that, especially, or if you have questions on anything else, let me know. Anyways, I think this video has gone on way longer than it should have for such a short game, but I hope you got a lot out of it. And yeah, just try to focus on those things, and play a lot of games to get that moving. Anyways, I'm signing out. Good luck, and ta-ta.